When I met Lane, he was just loving, he was caring, and I had my son, who at that time wasn't a year old yet, and Lane just immediately bonded with him. They had an immediately great relationship. I just knew like Lane was the guy that I wanted to spend forever with. And then when we were together at 3.5 months is when we found out we were pregnant. I didn't have any friends I could go to. I didn't have any community. I couldn't go to my parents. And so for me, I truly felt like I had no one. I felt like I had to deal with this by myself. Lane did not feel ready to have the baby, and that abortion was the best option for us. And so me feeling like I had nobody and feeling like if I were to have this baby, Lane was going to leave me after feeling like, he's this guy that has loved me better than anybody ever has. I felt like I had to do what he wanted because I didn't want to lose Lane for me and for my son. And so ultimately that was the decision that we went with. I tried giving the baby names. I tried, offering like an open adoption, and Lane was just not for it. It was just a very closed door. It was, this is the option we're doing. This is what we're sticking with. We made the appointment. And at the time in Minnesota, the only abortion clinic that did abortions, and especially the pill abortion, was up in, I think, St. Paul. So we had to strategically plan when that would work out and for me to find care for my son. And so I think it was about 2 weeks after we had called that we went up there. Yep. And I was shaking. I was terrified. You just had that sense inside of you like, this isn't right. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing, but you're just doing it anyway. When I got there, it's appalling because that they know you're most likely there for an abortion. But when you walk in, it's just, they're chipper, they're smiling. Nobody stops to ask you, how are you doing with this? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Maybe we could give you different options. Maybe we could, sit and talk about it further. There's none of that. It's basically you get in, you get back there, they want to get you checked out as soon as possible and moved on. But thankfully for us, the first appointment we went to, there was a nurse. She was older, and I think she just could sense how uneasy I was without having to say anything. And she actually said, like, maybe you guys should go home and think about this further. You can make another appointment to come back, but maybe you need more time. When we left the office, I had hope that maybe Lane would see it that way. Maybe he would be like, maybe this is life telling us this isn't the right choice. Maybe we should reconsider. But Lane didn't feel that way. Lane was very much so still, this is the only option. And so for another 2 weeks, it was, for me, nerves building up because I knew it was coming. But again, it was the only choice I felt I had. So 2 weeks later, we ended up going back up. And again, at that point, like it was much worse for me. Night before and the day of, like I could hardly even keep my eyes open because I just wanted to keep them closed the whole time. I was shaking uncontrollably from anxiety. I felt nauseous and sick nonstop. And again, when we got to the clinic, if I was a nurse and I saw me in that form, I would have asked questions like, you're obviously not feeling good about this decision. You're obviously not okay. Let's talk further. But again, when we walked in, smiles, happiness, like it just seemed like a normal clinic that you would walk into. Nothing of the indication that abortions are happening here. There are babies dying here. We went to the back room. They did the assessment quicker than what they did the first time. They said that we were at 8 weeks and that we could do the pill abortion. And based off of the things that I had read about the D&C and the risk of severe complications and not being able to have babies in the future, I thought that the pill form would be the safer route to go. So that's what we went with. And then we got transferred to another room where like tiles are white. It's just a big bright white room, and the only thing that's separating between you and the next patient over is a white curtain, and you can hear the other women around you struggling and going through the same thing that you are. And I remember there was a girl, and I remember just hearing her crying and questioning herself, like, is this the right choice? Are we doing the right thing? Asking myself internally, this is obviously against our nature. This is against the women's nature to be essentially killing your baby, and yet here we are. The doctor ended up coming in, and she had the pill, and she went through it all with us, and they basically just tell you, it's going to be a heavy period, you might have some cramping, what you're going to do is take this pill, and then in X amount of hours you're going to take the next pill. and the baby's going to dissolve, and it's just a period, and it'll be over with within 24 to 48 hours. And with that, I just thought, okay, this is going to be quick. The quicker we do this, the quicker we leave. And I remember when she handed me the cup, I just kind of looked at it and looked at Lane, and I remember I asked him, like, are you sure this is what you want? And before he could even answer, she was very much so almost irritated and was kind of like, well, either you take him or you give him back. Like, I have to watch you either take the pill or you need to give him to me so I can move on to the next patient. And then Lane just kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, take it. So I quickly took it, and she was like, okay, you're good to go. Stop at the desk on your way out. And that was it. And again, there was no any emotion besides almost like she was just, all right, well, thanks for stopping in. Have a great day, and move on to the next one. I remember just starting to shut down, basically. Like, I was just like, I want to get to the car. I want to get home. I just want to go to sleep. I don't want to deal with this type of thing. I want to just be able to go to sleep and just let it happen without me really having to let it happen. And they also never told me that after you take the first pill, if you have regrets, you have X amount of hours and you can come in or go to a clinic or a hospital ER and they can reverse it. There was none of that shared with me. We stopped at the pharmacy and got the next round of pills. And the pharmacist, I could tell just by the look on his face, he knew what it was for. And he was the first person all day that gave me just a look of sympathy. He didn't even need to say anything. It was just on his face. And he was very kind-hearted. He was very soft-spoken, explaining things to me. He was saying, I'm sorry you're going through this. And that was the first person all day that I had any empathy, sympathy, anything from. When we got back to the Lane's apartment and we opened the bag and we're about to take the next pills, is they prescribed Percocet to go with it as a pain management. And nobody asked me at all, like, have you ever had an addiction to pain medication? Does addiction run in your family? There was none of that. I took the next set of pills, and I remember I got drowsy really quickly after taking it. And for hours, I was kind of in and out of sleep. And then I remember I started cramping, and it just got more intense and more intense. And even compared to the contractions I had had with my son, they weren't normal period cramps. They were significantly worse than period cramps, and significantly worse, if not the same, as the contractions that I had when I was in labor. Late in the night or early in the morning, I just had this feeling of like I needed to go to the bathroom. And so I quickly ran to the bathroom, and there was just blood everywhere. And I didn't realize how much blood there was going to be, but there was a lot of blood. And I remember I had felt something come out, and I was very confused because they had told me that the baby was going to be dissolved and there wouldn't be anything there for me to look at. But I remember I had turned around and I had saw my baby right there. And at the time, I didn't know the size of a 5 to 8 week baby. But now that I do, having 2 more kiddos since then and doing more research and looking into things, there's absolutely no way that baby was 8 weeks. It had to be between 10 and 12 weeks because of how big he or she was. I had no idea what I was supposed to do because they didn't tell me what you're supposed to do. Because again, they say your baby's going to be dissolved. It's just a period. Basically, you'll wake up, you might bleed for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's it. And so I was just in shock. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I got myself cleaned up as best as I could. And then I remember I was just kind of I just go back to bed now. I'm supposed to act like this didn't even happen. And so that's what I did. I went back to bed, and I remember for about 2 weeks, I was just numb and in shock from the whole thing. I just cried and cried for hours because of how much I immediately regretted it. The shock of realizing what had happened, continually replaying in my head without feeling like I could share that with anyone else, and needing to basically pull myself together to be a mom to my son. I was basically on autopilot. And then after that, we basically kind of just put it in a closet and stuffed it down and didn't talk about it with one another for a long time. It would come up here and there, but it wasn't ever shared together. It caused a lot of pain in our relationship throughout the last 7 years. I didn't know that even if you have an abortion, your body doesn't understand that there was a baby and now there's not a baby. And I truly felt for the first year and a half after the abortion, I truly felt like I was going crazy. I lashed out at a lot of people. I took my anger out at a lot of people. the pain of it is always there. And I would say almost 90% of things that Lane and I have gone through, it's underlying resentment and anger at Lane and the guilt that comes with it. Because when you see a story about a mom who goes through a miscarriage, they can grieve that publicly, and they should grieve that, and they should be able to go through it. And then when you have an abortion, there's grief there, but you don't feel like you can grieve it because you chose this, like you made this choice. And so there's that guilt on top of the grief that you feel like it's a constant battle of being like, I'm so sad about this and I regret this, but I made this choice. Am I even allowed to grieve it? I'm angry at Planned Parenthood. Based off the ultrasound, the baby looked like it was 5, 6, 7 weeks along. But like I said, based off what I saw, that baby had to be 10 to 12 weeks along. And the fact that they're able to hide things, the fact that they're able to lie about it, and they don't give you the actual facts behind the abortion pill specifically and the dangers that come with it, and the years of mental trauma that you will go through with it, and they don't give you any resources.
At that time, I was 20 years old, and for some reason I thought that I wasn't ready, and I felt like this was a bad thing, and what am I going to do? I was panicking. I look back to that and I think how dumb that sounds, because Kenzie already had a son, and I loved him, and I fell in love with her, watching her. One of the times where I just knew that I wanted to be a dad and I wanted this for the rest of my life was watching her feed him at the table at her parents' house. And so thinking back, I really don't understand why I had that belief. And I never stopped to think about how she might feel already having a child and then aborting one afterwards. I never really stopped to think about that until just this last year when we really started talking about it. And that really hit me hard, because that's incredibly insensitive of me to not think about her feelings when it comes to that. And I thought that was our only option. And when she came up with the idea of an open adoption, I remember saying, if we were to have the baby, I know that I'd want to keep it. That makes no sense to me now. Obviously, being a man and not having the feelings and not actually going through the abortion, I didn't understand her feelings on it. I didn't understand how it affected her mind. I didn't understand how it affected her body. I was just kind of on the outside of it and very insensitive about it, and really didn't give her the respect to sit down and really think about it, or I was just unable to process it myself because, like I said, I didn't really go through it. It was her that went through the difficulties. And, I wish I could have pulled my head out of my butt and really understood what was going on with her. I think there would have been a lot of issues in our relationship that we could have avoided if I really would have tried to understand where she was coming from. So yeah, that led into a lot of difficulties in our relationship, and a lot of points where it could have ended. I'm grateful that she stuck with me through it all, and she sees that I regret all of that from 7 years ago. I was there physically, but I was not there emotionally. And so I don't think I really allowed myself to feel anything. I just tried to shut it out and just, believe what I believed. Believe that this was the right thing to do, and, believe that time will heal everything, but time does not heal everything. There's a lot of steps we've had to take to heal.
I really took a huge step back from it, and especially after the abortion, I kind of just had the mindset of like, God doesn't want me now. There's no way I could come to him. And so I just basically kind of almost entirely shut the door on my faith. And then last year, our kiddos were just asking a lot of questions. And I remember in December has always been really rough for me for personal reasons, but especially after the abortion, because I had done the math and found out that December was the time that the baby would have been born. And so last December, I remember it was just really hard.
It was Christmas Eve when, we were getting everything ready for Christmas morning, and we had finished doing everything we needed to do before, we wanted to spend time together around midnight and just hanging out and talking about what Christmas was going to be like. And it just hit me like, we have 3 beautiful children that we get to spend Christmas together. We get to wake up with them, and they get to open their presents and just have this amazing time with them. And we could have had one more, and we don't, because of what I thought was the right decision. And I broke down. I went out and I started talking to her, and I was crying, and it was a very big moment for both of us, I think.
Yeah,
and
it was.
It was really hard, and there's been many moments since then that I've just really thought about it, especially coming to God and realizing that that's the biggest sin I've ever committed. And that's one thing that I still struggle with, and I will struggle with, just trying to understand, because a lot of my feelings on it is confusion. Why did I think that way? Why did I want to do that? I don't understand. And it brings me anger, it brings me heartbreak and frustration. I failed Kenzie, I failed myself, I failed our family in that moment. And then I also think about, our children that we have now, that I took something away from them that they could have had. And that breaks my heart too.
The one thing that we've learned this last year in our healing journey is again, coming to God and building our faith. I had heard a sermon, basically a pastor saying, as long as you keep something in the dark, that's where the enemy thrives. He has the power over it. He can, let it grow and fester and build and just constantly bring you lies and make you feel like total crap about yourself. But the more you share it with those people that are closer to you, and the more light you shine on it and you hand it over to God, the less hold it has on you. And after I had heard that, I was like, okay, that's been something that Lane and I have actively been doing, is going to our close friends and our close family and sharing it with them. And each and every person that we have shared it with, I was always terrified they're going to hate us, they're going to shun us, they're not going to want anything to do with us anymore. And every single person has grieved with us, they have prayed over us. I would say it helped immensely in our healing journey. And I know, unfortunately, it's not like that for every woman out there, but I would say it is worth the chance of finding a family member or a close friend and being able to just share it with them, to be vulnerable. I think has given us the courage to be here today. My goal is to help other women know you're not alone, and also to help get the industry shut down, because it should be shut down. Because of us watching Abby's movie this last June for Lane, that was a huge eye-opener in what I went through, because he wasn't there to physically see it. But when we were watching her movie and she had pulled her file and saw the ultrasound, both Lane and I were like, wait a minute, do they keep records? And so I went on a limb and sent in, the request form. And in July, we actually got our file with all the ultrasounds in it. So we did get those, and we looked at those back in July. It was the first time that I've gotten to see those at all. After we had seen the movie and we looked at our ultrasounds, and I came to find out that Planned Parenthood has been known to zoom out on ultrasounds, or to almost try to distort them in any way possible. When we went back and looked at it, it's just astounding, because there's no indication on there of the true size of what our baby was. Even when my last kiddo at 5 weeks and we went in and I saw her ultrasound, it just doesn't make any sense how they could have such a distinct picture of her, even so tiny. But Planned Parenthood, it doesn't line up at all to what I saw.